Hello and welcome to another episode of 7th Tier Podcast, a storybook brawl podcast focused on strategy and high-level play. My name is Jethro, and I am joined this week and every week by your friend and mine, the best brawl player I know. It's Sythesys. Sith, how's it going?
Hello. Yeah, it's good. It's been a pretty good week. Some interesting changes in the meta, and I'm looking forward to kind of giving this patch a bit of a rundown before it all changes this week.
Agreed. A little bit of a farewell to this patch. A patch that's been quite good overall. I think this has been one of my favourites so far. So we're going to start this week like we do every week with our weekly stats. I'll go first. So in the past 7 days, I've played 75 brawls. It's easy to play a lot when you come 8th. Doesn't take as long. With 51 top 4s and 16 crowns for an average of 3.52. That was a lot higher on Friday. I was pushing 2.9 on Friday, but I had a bit of a rough weekend experimenting with some stuff.
Sure.
What about you?
I've played 48 games this week, much more than last week, with an average placement of 2.81, 23 crowns, and 36 top 4s. So that's 12 games where I didn't top 4.
And one of those is because I knocked you out, so that one doesn't count.
I do remove disconnects from my stats for what it's worth, but otherwise, yeah, those are my stats.
Yeah, I removed disconnects. 48 games. What's been treating you well in the past week?
Actually, the biggest standout with statistical backup, I've got one Trophy Hunter game where I came first, but I still think Trophy Hunter's quite bad this patch. But really, Fallen Angel, I've picked 5 times with an average placement of 1.2. So I've come first, second or something. So Fallen Angel, I couldn't tell you why, but has been treating me really well. Loki is always, as always, there's nothing super standout. Hilarious, my stats currently indicate that the worst heroes in the game are Wonder Waddle and Pied Piper, which I do not believe. I think it's partly that when I get the strong heroes, I try to do silly things, but c'est la vie.
I think part of what's making Fallen Angel so strong is that it's power when you need it, and then by the time you get to turn 4 and you're building yourself towards the late game, that's that pivot turn where the game's built at the moment, you're powerful enough that you haven't lost a lot of health and you've got the time to pivot and stay strong.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And both of the main... It's weird to call Copyboy one of the main archetypes, but it's kind of been true this last week. Both Slay and Friendly Spirit really benefit from even just half of that buff. Like, having 2 extra power on your Chupacabra gets it slaying significantly more consistently, and having +2/+2 on a Friendly Spirit means it's a really strong unit rather than a medium unit, and it just helps you transition cleanly into those mid-game archetypes. Trees as well. Soltec Ancient is much better with 2 attack than with 0, unless you're doing scam things.
I miss scam things. There was a Sadrak in my lobby the other day, and they had 40 health for a long time, and then when I played them, they had 12 health, and had transitioned into some sort of scam thing, and I was like, I'm so sorry, friend. The other thing that's true about those 2 main comps is that the right-hand side of your board doesn't matter that much. Right? If you've Slays, you've got your Chupacabra stuff, your Shadow Assassin stuff going on somewhere, but then you've got 2 to 3 spots that can just be some balls of stats that are helping you out.
I actually want to talk about that as one of the most interesting things I've been doing in this meta is, you know what I would like putting in those 3 slots? Heartwood Elder and 2 random trees. Like, I almost never go full trees. I think full trees is pretty heinous. But, like, Happy Little Tree, Nutcracker, Heartwood Elder, perfect for that 3 slot that isn't part of your main comp. It's a bunch of scaling. It's a really good way of making a... Shoulder Fairies big if you've got a huge Happy Little Tree or whatever. It's a good half comp. They're not going to last long term, basically never. Maybe the Happy Little Tree will make it out if it gets exceptionally large, but if you've got a few free slots and just need some stats, Heartwood Elder does a lot of stats.
That makes a lot of sense. I always leave these calls with things I'm desperate to try out now, back in the Storybook. And that makes a lot of sense to me, that you get that automatic scaling, because that's everything that you want in the mid game. Some good units as well. I also have Waddle down as something to mention. I've been really disappointed by Waddle this last week. Prior to this week, I had Waddle as high as anyone. I think Waddle was one of the top heroes in the game. I think it was second or third on my tier list last week. And I've just had multiple games recently. Previously, I would expect to get a gold by 3.0. It would be rare that I wouldn't. And I've had 2 games this week where I didn't get one by level 4. And that's not really acceptable to me for a top tier hero. Now, this is variance. You know, I can't play a statistically significant number of games as Waddle. But I was thinking about it from a theory crafting perspective, and I think part of the problem might be Piper. When you look in the top level lobbies these days, there's almost always a Piper somewhere in there. Because people have learned Piper's one of the top heroes now. He's really, really good. And his shop has that extra animal, so he's buying them up in the early game. And since he's there with the animals, he's taking them out of the shop, you're slightly less likely to see them. I don't know how significant that's going to be long term. I'm still going to play Waddle when I see it. But I wanted to flag that to you, see what you thought.
That is interesting. Again, my statistics for Waddle indicate that he's not done great. I would put those as anomalies rather than patterns, given that there was only 2 games. I came a 4th and a 6th, you know, whatever. I have been relatively, like, I've seen plenty of Waddles in my games doing well. I think you might be right that actually Piper has, in a way that, you know, whenever you're competing for an archetype, it's problematic. You know, when you play, the reason Trophy Hunter's not great this patch is because Grim Souls and so on are more competed over. Wonder Waddle's level 2 animals are a little more competed over. Certainly, you know, more people are going to be buying Kitty Cut Purse because, well, Piper will happily buy a Kitty Cut Purse if it's a tutu.
Yeah.
But I still think they're extremely strong. You can still have completely ludicrous starts as Wonder Waddle. You know, mice and stuff are still completely insane. You have very good access to level 2 treasures, including really wanting Crown of Atlas, and Crown of Atlas now actually transitions into something very good, which it used to be, you know, you'd look to replace Crown of Atlas. Maybe it is suffering a little bit if there's a Piper in the lobby, but it's got to still be good for sure.
Level 2 treasures going up in value is you're right, a huge boon to Waddle. On my statistics page, Waddle is down in 7th among my heroes from last week with 5 games played, down about at the rate that Peter Pants is. It's 5 games played, 3 top 4s, only 1 crown.
Sure. For
an average of 3.6. And I think that's quite a step down. Like the others that are good, like Loki, Piper, Fallen Angel, are up there at between 2.6 and 3.1. So it's a bit of a jump down to where Waddle has sat for me in the last week. But as I say, I've had a bad week with Waddle.
Yeah, worth thinking about. That was a conversation worth having, but not 5 games or whatever is not statistically significant, I don't think. So the problem with all of these stats is they're very small numbers. So
I'm now just going to check my lifetime with Waddle. Lifetime Waddle is in 10th place with 15 games, averaging 3.93. So actually lower than in the last week.
Sure.
Maybe I just suck at playing Waddle. That's something we should consider, is that I think, because when I roll Miri, I'm like, this is easy street. I can't wait to come second. That's what I think when I roll Miri, it's great. I think my brain goes to the same place when I roll Waddle, and actually I think Waddle requires more attention than that.
It does require more attention than Miri. Everything does.
The other hero I wanted to flag quickly was Sir Galahad. This is the hero that's replaced Waddle in my top 5. Wasn't on my list, I think, last time we spoke. Fundamentally, that was because I hadn't played him enough. He's great.
It's so easy to get so many treasures early. Like, Cinderella is completely free. One thing, I had at least one game with Galahad where I did really badly, and I realized it was a classic trap the kind of thing you have to avoid on a lot of heroes, where I was taking units thinking, oh, these will be good once they get the Galahad buff, rather than just taking anything at all, because literally everything is good with Galahad buff. Don't take the Happy Little Trees over tutus, because Happy Little Tree is really good with a +2/+1. Just take the good units, triple whatever you see. It's fine. It's all good. I had at least one game where I was like, oh yeah, I've got all these trees and they're garbage. Why have I done this? I am dead.
It's an interesting line that Sir Galahad walks, because Miri, which I know I compare all the heroes to Miri, the hero power is a direction, and every one of your decisions is relevant to that hero power. Where Galahad, your decisions shouldn't be relevant to the hero power, I think, until after he's triggered. And then at that point I have all these stats. How do I get to late game strength while not selling my 15/15 Vampire or whatever it is.
Yeah. I mean, you still should be taking quest units higher than normal. You should still be picking up random idiot pairs, trying to hold. It's better to buy a bunch of, like, a random 2-drop and hold it than roll twice a decent amount of the time if your hand isn't full, just because you're more likely to see that triple naturalistically. And again, you don't care what you're tripling, just any unit is fine. And the hero power is, like, you want a full hand when you trigger your hero power. So even, again, just buying random units to hope to triple later is just more total stats that you can play with. So not a huge change in gameplay, but not nothing, for sure.
Cool. I think that brings us to the end of stats discussion and top 10 changes, unless you've got anything else to say on those two.
One thing I want to mention with top 10 changes, you have Merlin in your top 10, and I have Potion Master, and I think Potion Master is much better than Merlin. I think that is worth talking about.
Tell me about. I have played Potion Master 2 times in my life. I don't own the hero yet. It's one of the heroes that I know is considered good and that I'm meaning to play. So tell me about Potion Master. How does Potion Master work?
So Potion Master, obviously, its effect, whenever you cast a targeted spell on a creature, it gets +2/+2. This can start snowballing right from turn 1. If you hit a good unit and a Shard of the Ice Queen on turn 1, you can get an unbelievably large unit. Like, you can have if you hit Billy Gruff, it's a 5/6 on turn 1. Like, that's ridiculous. There's, a good amount of targeted spells throughout. And unlike Merlin, the buffs are directed. Like, you probably get fewer triggers than Merlin, but Merlin often ends up on a unit in my hand that I didn't really intend to play, but also don't really want to sell. Or it will end up on, my unit that I'm playing for now, but really don't want to hold on to. Potion Master has that ability to direct the buffs so that it's going on a unit that gets bonuses from that, whether that's Friendly Spirit in the mid game, really good at buffing that, or Chupacabra, or any Slay unit. A directed +2/+2 is so much stronger than +2/+1 at random that, and there are units that you don't want. Like, it's actively bad when you give +2/+1 to some of your support sometimes. Potion Master doesn't have that problem.
Agreed. There's a lot of the strength in current top tier comps like Copyboy, like Slays, comes from getting those stats onto the units that it matters on. Yeah, you get 2 or 3 shots. If you give a Friendly Spirit +5/+5 from Wormroot plus the Potion Master trigger, you're getting that trigger 2 or 3 times a game.
Yeah.
That's a lot of additional stats. The same goes for a Wombats. You can...
Little harder to target a Wombats, but yes, if you can do it. And you can do it. Like, there are spells that target neutrals. Even things like Mix-a-Wizzle leaves the creature with a permanent +2/+2. And that's really nice. Like, that definitely comes up. If you can get Forking Rod going, if you can get Crystal Ball, it is a good mage's hero, but you don't need to force it. Just casting Wormroots on your monsters in any comp, like, don't worry about it too much. Like Merlin, right? I don't force Hatball as Merlin. I play it as here are a few extra stats. I play Potion Master basically the same way, but I think it's just a little bit better, a little bit more efficient at what it does because it's targeted.
Cool. I can't wait to try out Potion Master. I will defend Merlin briefly. I know that a lot of people are high on Merlin. I think in the same way as Fallen Angel, Merlin is stats when you want them prior to transitioning in the mid game. I've got a bunch of random 2/1s spread across my team. That's making me surprisingly strong right now. And it also does push you towards powerful things like Hatball, powerful things like mages. And I mean, my favourite thing to do at the moment is to take Moonsong Horn, because then I get to play the cantrip gain 1 health whenever I see it.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't like having to roll that away. It makes me feel sad whenever that happens. And Merlin makes it actually rewarding to play that, instead of, well, this was nothing, but I'm glad I clicked it.
Yeah, I think that covers our top 10 changes.
You can find our full lists in the show notes. Next up is a new segment called Card of the Week. This is where we take a single creature, treasure, hero, or spell and really dive deep on it. Really look at what this card is, how it works, how it plays, how you can get the most value from it, and the sorts of things that might not occur to you when you first read the card. I know that's been true for me of almost every card in the game. of deciding, oh, this is what Polywoggle does. I distinctly remember being a very new player and being like, Polywoggle's here as the bad card. This is the trap that you're a good player if you realize it's bad. And feeling like pretty proud of myself for not taking Polywoggles until Matt sat me down and pointed out what Polywoggle actually does, which is race you to the next tier and give you some direction.
Yeah, certainly figuring out that Golden Polywoggle plus Grimsoul is game winning is a big part of what Polywoggle's for. But not the card in question.
No, our card of the week this week is Copycat. So, Copycat is the tier 4. It's a colorless animal. It's a 2/12. And after it attacks, it triggers the last breaths of every character behind it.
Yeah, so Copycat really is an archetype in and of itself at the moment, and it's really one that's emerged since the tournament. During the tournament, no one was playing Copycat. Like, not only were they not doing this whole archetype thing that we're about to cover, no one was taking it full stop, basically. And I really think that some players have made really good innovations, realized that actually this combination is an extremely powerful thing to be doing, and it's certainly the biggest change, without the patch, that has just kind of come about organically from being a strong thing to pivot into on turn 4 that has trophy hunter levels of stats late game. Like, no one is matching. If you go off, no one is matching you on numbers.
This was my comparison as well, was this can make any hero into trophy hunter, and that's busted. Like, trophy hunter's late game is enormous. So, tier 1 of the card, it's a 2/12, and you want to put it in front of some last breath triggers. What last breath triggers are bad with Copycat? That's something I wanted to mention.
Pig. Pig's a classic.
So, Pig, if the Copycat attacks and it's behind it, it will just give your opponent 2 gold next round.
Don't do that.
More if the pig later dies.
Otherwise, summons are often awkward. You do have to make sure that either the Copycat is dying when it attacks, or Copycat isn't attacking first, which can be awkward because you do want it attacking first. And if the summon is like a black cat or a princess peep, it's probably not worth moving things around to make that happen. We'll talk about the good ones, but I think realistically you can take, I want to say, as a 2/12, you can play Copycat as a bunch of stats. Like 14 total attack and toughness is the same as you're getting on a Juliet on that tier, which is like just the ball of stats. No, it doesn't quite match Soul Tack Ancient. Obviously, square numbers tend to be better than extremes either direction. But especially if you have like a Mim or a Treasure that gives it some extra attack, a Sting, God, it loves a Sting. A 2/12 is not unacceptable levels of stats. It's not like the old Copycat that was a 4/4, and that really was an embarrassing level of stats. Like, when Copycat was a 4/4, you couldn't play it. It was the same stats as like Grandmother and Vulture, but those got much, much bigger, and Copycat wasn't doing that. As a 2/12, it survives almost all attacks.
There's a big difference between stats that you want in your front line and stats that you want in your back line. Right? The Grandmother and the Vulture get away with those stat lines because they're doing other things to the game. I mean, the Vulture's just literally growing itself.
Yeah.
But like a Soul Tech, we want that in the front line, therefore we need it to have 20 toughness of stats.
Yeah, certainly.
I think the 2/12 change was great for that reason. I have seen people put Copycat in front of Romeo's, and I don't understand why.
It's not super embarrassing. Like, if you have Juliet in one, like, the trigger on Romeo is summoning a big unit. It's like an 11/11 or whatever. When my unit attacks, summon an 11/11 is an extremely good thing to be doing. You do have to do that awkward Juliet in first, hope she dies when she's already quite big with Romeo's, but it's hard, but you can do it.
Oh, okay. I'm yet to see it work out for somebody, but more power to the people who want to transition from royals into cats. So it doesn't take a genius to work out. Moving to tier 2 here, it doesn't take a genius to work out. We want to put some good last breaths behind our Copycat. What's top of the list for you? What are you looking for to put behind your Copycat?
I mean, the number one is Friendly Spirit. Both because it's a lot of stats. If you even If it's just a 3/3, it's not that big. You know, when my copycat attacks, it gives +3/+3 to one of my units. It's not that exciting, but it means that you're now tripling down on any buffs on that friendly spirit. If you give it a worm root, that's +9/+9 total stats. That's crazy. Treasures, etc. Anything that makes it bigger gets much stronger, and it transitions into the late game that we'll talk about in a moment. It's also on the same tier. You can spot them in the same shop. That it's easy to get there right then and there.
The comparison I would make at that point is to Stag, right? Sure. Stag is the best tier 3 unit. When it attacks, we're giving +6/+6 to the units behind me.
Yeah.
Potentially. You can also transition from Stag into Cat Spirit. The Stag attacks, it pumps the friendly spirit. The Cat attacks, you get the stats twice.
Absolutely. Slot 1 Stag into slot 2 Copycat is definitely something I've been doing. So that's kind of the tier 4 naturalistic. Again, it works with tokens. I'm never excited to be summoning a token with Copycat. It's fine. You can do it. It's just harder.
Stats are so much more important than tokens.
Yeah, the tier 2 and 3 tokens in particular are just kind of small. But heading into tier 5 is where we can get some really strong, usually temporary payoffs. Both Wretched Mummy and Wombats in Disguise are both units that you can place behind your Copycat and just get a ton of value from attacking. Most boards, when they hit, especially fresh on tier 5, can beat 1 Mummy trigger. Almost none of them can beat 2 Mummy triggers. And yeah, it takes a while for you to get the second Mummy trigger because it's in the back row, but it'll still clean up really effectively. And Wombats in Disguise is just a ton of stats. You're summoning on average, an 8/9?
Wombats is a 4/4 itself, and then it's summoning on average a 4.03, 5.35.
Yeah, sure. It's just a lot of... It is a summon. You do have to think about your positioning a little bit harder, but again, you're tripling down on buffs.
So my question for you is, are we playing a 6-creature board if we've got Cat in 2 and it's got Wombat's Friendly Spirit behind it? Are we willing to say, my 7th minion is a random minion with +4/+4? Hopefully we don't lose the, 1 in 6 that they go first and attack us.
Definitely not always, but definitely not never either. If you have Hermes Boots, I'm much more likely to do that, because then there isn't that 1 in 6. Then there's just then there's the risk that they also have one themselves.
They can have Hermes Boots, or they can have the dragon, the lightning dragon.
Yes, I actually want to talk a lot about lightning dragon, but I'll do that in a bit. But lightning dragon is actually, if you're running a 6-unit comp, dragon as your 7th in any slot works quite well.
Because it's going to die.
Because it is going to die, and allow your Copycat to still have the naturalistic first attack. Also, as a 2/12, it lives through a decent number of attacks. If people have Grimsoul in 1, which plenty of people do, you're not dying to a Grimsoul attack almost ever. Obviously, there are comps that are just attacking with their biggest unit at that stage of the game. You've got to get a feel for it, play it by ear. But the answer is sometimes you need to make that evaluation. Don't be afraid to put it in slot 1 and only get half the value. That is completely fine. If it's triggering a mummy, that's going to win the fight. The fact you miss out on a friendly spirit buff is acceptable. You've killed their whole board. Decide whether or not you need the full Copycat to win the fight, and make that value judgment.
That makes a lot of sense to me. So we've got... The other thing I've noticed about mummies is they're surprisingly easy to triple, because not many other people want them.
People don't hold on to them. That's the big deal, right? Is that, yes, I triple it. Yes, it'll stick around forever, but it's not in my late game comp, unless maybe it sticks around if I'm full pumpkins. But you can triple it for sure. The card we haven't talked about is the big payoff. The really, this archetype really is known as copyboy, or I mean, it has 100 names, but copyboy is what we're calling it, and it's the combination of Copycat and Good Boy. On its own, this isn't actually very exciting. My Copycat attacks, and it gives my Good Boy buffs to the whole team. Cool. That's just the same as having Good Boy in slot 1, and now he's not dying till tier 5, whatever. But it's really when you start getting golden Copycats, or just 2 Copycats, that it gets exciting. So if you have a golden Copycat, you attack, Good Boy triggers, buffing itself, and then the second Copycat trigger is with the buffed Good Boy's stats. So if it's just a vanilla 2/2, that's a 2/2 to your team, and then a 4/4 for your team, for a total of +6/+6. And Good Boy on its own with no buffs is not gonna match those stats. And again, at that point you're not tripling down on buffs on Good Boy. You're like 10 times the buffs or something. You give it +10 health. That's 100 health for your whole team. It's ridiculous how quickly those stats scale out of control.
Yeah, it's multiplicative. You're getting it again and again. You can have Echo Woods stealing those stats as well. So my question was, we're going into tier 6. We've got this cat with some mummies, but we need to get rid of those mummies. They're not gonna cut the mustard against other people's tier 6 comps. Are we then just like dwarves rolling for Lordy? We're just locked in on Good Boy? Do we have a get out at that point? What's the plan?
You can go into pumpkins from Good Boy, from Copycat, with Mummy. It's not plan A, definitely not plan A, but it is a thing you can do, especially if you've got like an upgraded Mummy. At that point, it's very easy to translate into pumpkins. Copycat does work with pumpkin, but don't think too hard about it. If you've got corrupted Heartwood and the Copycat is evil, that will help.
I did have a corrupted Heartwood Ancient Sarcophagus game with Copycat, and that worked very well. You're dealing 3 everywhere, you're dealing 4 everywhere. I forget, did you have minions?
Yeah, it's not your main plan. You're also not that committed, generally speaking. Like, it's not like it's not like Dwarves, where you've committed 7 units to this comp. You've probably got something else going on. Again, we're talking about this whole comp, but it's a Good Boy, a Copycat, a Friendly Spirit, maybe a second Death Rattle, maybe a second Copycat. But it's not 7 units. Dwarves is 7 units. You don't have a choice. You can't pivot without replacing, without some serious effort. Yes. Here, you must have had something else going on. At least I hope so.
Yes, we do not abdicate a 2-minion board of Copycat Wombats to get there.
You can Wombat. You can go Bearstein. Put some baby bears behind your Copycat. It's not necessarily as good as some other stuff. You can do it. I certainly have done Copycat Baby Bear Monkey's Paw, and that was legitimately very good. Again, not your primary game plan, but no, you're not doom rolling for Good Boy. It's not the only thing in your eyes, especially since actually finding the Good Boy isn't enough. Good Boy as a 2/2 is not sufficient. You both need to find the Good Boy and either have treasures that are making it larger, which can be things like, Robin Wood or Helm of the Gosling, ways to just give it some extra stats can be enough. Or you can just find the spells, the +10 health, the +10 attack. If you've already got a Monkey's Paw, if you've already got even just a Ring of Rage, the +3 attack to everything.
I was going to mention you get a lot of tier 4 treasures this comp because you're tripling cats and you're tripling friendly spirits. Quite aggressively, on top of anything normal that you're tripling,
Yeah.
I happen to see 3 Heartwoods or whatever it is.
Sure.
And if either Ring of Rage or 6 of Shields, the +3 attack treasure and the +3 health treasure, all health, never attack, both work really well with what you're doing here.
Yeah.
The health as well. Copycat's big at a 2/12. Once it's a 2/18, nothing's touching it.
Yeah, certainly. So yeah. You're not doom rolling for Good Boy. It is definitely powerful enough that you should be. Don't just take fine 6 drops. Like, I'm a little greedier than that at this point, but yeah, you're not forcing it.
Moving on up to tier 3. What are the heroes that you pick and you're like, okay, Copyboy is going to be open to me. This is a good hero for playing Copyboy. What are the heroes that make you think, maybe we should avoid this strat?
Number 1 has to be Piper. You're significantly more likely to find Copycat itself. You're way more likely to find Good Boy. Like, the statistical increase to finding Good Boy is actually obscene on Piper. It's why he was always a valid late game hero who just didn't have any early game, because you could find Good Boys much more consistently. I don't have the statistics on exactly how much it increases it, but it's a lot. The animal pool is not that many units. It's 20 of the almost 100 units in the game. So that slot is A, having a 6th slot at all, and B, having it be this much smaller pool. A 1 in 20. So I guess it's +5%, right? It's every roll there is one extra slot that has a 5% chance of being a good boy. That's huge. That's a big difference. So yeah, Piper is definitely one of them. He also is interested in the treasures that support this. Crown of Atlas is the one worth mentioning. I love when my animals are good as Piper. I'm taking a ton of animals. It goes really, really well with this strategy. So Piper's number 1. Do you want to talk about some that you've found success with?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about it's heroes that get stats onto that friendly spirit for free is one of the things that makes me think, oh, I'm seeing a copycat in the shop. I can move in on this legitimately, or I'm seeing a friendly spirit. This is a good idea. And it's similar to what we spoke about at the top of the episode. It's Galahad, it's Fallen Angel, it's Merlin. Obviously, you're a little bit rolling the dice as Merlin.
Yes, Potion Master, the correct Merlin. Yeah, I think I agree that both the good boy and the friendly spirit come in a little underwhelming and really want you to just put any stats at all on them. And the heroes that can put stats on them are really that's what you want to be doing.
Yeah. Heroes to avoid, top of my list would probably be Skip, because you don't have the time at tier 4 to assemble multiple specific 4th tier units. I find 4 at Skip, top of the ones that I regularly play. I mean, it's probably worse as Fates, but we're never going to know.
yeah, that's nothing. But yeah, I agree with, generally speaking, as Skip, I'm trying to force and trying to assemble the most powerful unit right here and now. A 212 on 3.0 when everyone else on 3.0 does clean up. Like, it's not embarrassing. Friendly Spirit is not good enough as Skip on 4.0 or whatever, but I'm not against Copycat. I recently played against a Skip who had a Soltec Ancient with a Mim behind it. I was like, well, this kills my whole team. I'm completely cold to it. And Copycat is similar. If you can make it a 5/12, yeah, that will trade for 4 of my units at that stage of the game, and that'll stabilize Skip. The heroes that I have had the least success with strategy, Loki is number 1. As we said, you need to be buffing the copycat. The friendly spirit and the good boy, and you don't have any targeted spells. It's hard to do that. Maybe you've had some gingerbread houses, so all your shop minions have some extra stats. It's on average, it's less. It can be a problem. I have still done it. It has gone fine. But I have definitely been in the situation where, like, cool, I've got the copycats, I've got the good boy, and the good boy is a 2/2, and I cannot make it bigger. You don't want to end up in that spot.
It's a big risk, but I'm just looking down the list of heroes here. I'm excited to try Gwen as a copy boy thing. Have you done that?
I recently started a discussion in the Discord about on 4.0 as Gwen, you find a friendly spirit and a copycat, which unite, because I literally had that option. Yeah, totally. I think you could either, at that point, knight the friendly spirit for more immediate stats if you're dying, or the copycat for way more value later on and more kind of quadratic scaling.
I mean, it doubles the power toughness of the copycat as well when you do it, right?
So and yeah, a 4/12 is going to win you some fights for sure. But when you knight the friendly spirit, not only does its trigger it goes from giving +3/+3 to +12/12 instantly, and you're already doubling that because you're attacking with the copycat. Like, that's more total stats.
Yes, it's huge.
But usually you want... Yes, Gwen is totally fine with it. The other 2 heroes I want to avoid it with, though this is a little arbitrary. Horde Dragon, you can't get the tier 1 treasures that we're about to highlight. And part of the way I pivot into this strategy is if I have those tier 2 treasures that support it. Horde Dragon can't get them, so I'm less interested. And Celestial Tiger, partly because I don't want to have to take Hermes Boots as Celestial Tiger. I want to take any other treasure. Most heroes, Boots is one of the better tier 2 treasures. Most tier 2 treasures are fairly low impact. For Tiger, that's not true. Most heroes, I'm definitely taking Hermes Boots over Ring of Regen. Not as Tiger, no way. And so it's a little harder to get into this strategy as Tiger because your focus is elsewhere. And obviously, Ivella, Miri, the characters that are just doing their own thing. But
yeah, the linear on their own. Mad Catter. Unless you get there.
Sure. Yeah, sometimes you roll the friendly spirit, right? But yeah.
Up to tier 4, we've touched upon most of these already. So what are the treasures that we're looking for with this strategy? So At tier 2, it's the crown and the boots.
Yeah, these are absolutely critical. If I don't have one of these by the late game, this comp isn't functional. I genuinely think if you get to tier 6 and you don't have either Hermes boots or Crown of Atlas, this comp is far too fragile. If you can't guarantee that your copycat is attacking first, you need to have multiple copycats, and then one copycat often isn't enough. Unless it's good, and then it's getting the good boy buffs itself, and that means that's significantly more stats. So really, you need one of these two tier 2 treasures. It doesn't have to be early. It's quite easy to pick up tier 2 treasures in the late game by tripling chickens or polywoggles or just random idiots. There are a lot of tier 2 treasures. There are 22 tier 2 treasures. You're not that likely to find exactly what you want, but you get a lot of looks if you want them.
Well, that's a quiz just waiting to happen. I've also found that in the late game, actually holding on to some number of 2s, just almost at random, almost arbitrarily, or if you're moving into this in the mid game at a time that you'd normally like, it's time to sell off this sure shot, actually let's hold on to it. Because, I mean, sure shot's not a great example, because it's fine, let's get the good boy stats on there. Yeah, hold on to it so that you can pair it, so that you can triple them late and get those boots, because you're going to need them.
Other treasures to highlight, the Arc. I have definitely had some good Arc games. You know, you've already got a tier 4 unit. You've often got, you've got the tier 4 unit, you've got the tier 6 unit. And because it's such a small part of your overall comp, you can easily fit in Sure Shot, any good 3-drop, any good 5-drop. Don't even think about it. Because the stats on the good boy are worth so much. And the Arc is just kind of good anyway. If your comp isn't very space dependent, and this comp really isn't. It is very small relative to your whole board.
Yes, I think the easy comparison there is dwarves, which is the
complete opposite. Yeah.
Widest, fattest comp. You want dwarves in every slot at almost every point in the game.
And pumpkins as well. Pumpkins also want every single unit to be a high tier evil unit to make your pumpkins as good as they can be. And yeah, this is not that. They want everything to be good, so the good boy triggers are good, but you can get away with it.
But if you've got the Crown of Atlas, then you could throw wombats into your level tier 5 slot. That'll do. On a similar note, I was going to highlight Monkey's Paw.
Yeah.
Because we've talked about being a 6-character comp anyway, and because treasures that are worth a huge quantity of stats, you're getting those stats 2 or 3 times. Oh man, Monkey's Paw goes double duty with wombats as well. This is such good news.
Yeah, for sure. Stat buffs really is what it comes down to. We've highlighted the best ones, but even things like Power Orb, just +1/+1, because you're tripling, quadrupling down on these stats. Any stat buffs, even Fancy Pants, literally doubles the starting stats of Good Boy. You can work with that. It doesn't take too much. The positional treasures, like Sting and Haunted Helm, less so. Normally good with Good Boy, not great here.
I was going to highlight Moonsong Horn in the same vein as Power Orb, just because you want to play spells to pump your Friendly Spirit and Good Boy anyway. Being able to throw the cantrip +2/+0 on there whenever you see it, being able to throw... Yeah, being able to roll for cheap spells later. It's good.
Helm of the Gosling is actually another one that I wouldn't take very often on other comps, because it's kind of bad most of the time. It's not that much stats at the stage of the game you get it, unless you get it early. Good Boy is almost, you have to do a lot of math. I've spent a lot of my copycat games going, cool, so if I buff this Good Boy, it will get the Robin Hood trigger will go on this unit, and then the Helm will go on this one, and it's fine. And then the second Robin Hood, oh god.
What order do those go on the stack in?
Random. It's random.
Good to know.
Doing some math to make sure that your Good Boy is getting the buff is a little tricky, but again, makes transitioning into it so much easier. And it's especially worth mentioning as a treasure that isn't super strong usually.
So we've highlighted sort of I think we've got a good picture in our head now of what a standard copycat moving into copyboy board is going to look like during the game. What are the unusual strategies with this card? What's a novel way of playing with it?
Well, there's a few things here. Specific positioning things, especially in the late game, that can be really interesting. So
for positioning, obviously we are a podcast, so I'm going to quickly run people through. The board is 7 creatures, 4 in the front row, which we're going to number from left to right, positions 1, 2, 3, 4. 3 in the back row from left to right, positions 5, 6, and 7. Carry on.
So, for example, I have an upgraded copycat and a regular copycat. My back row is I have a good boy and a friendly spirit. This is a very... And then my other 3 units are 3 good somethings. Who cares?
Yeah, 3 chickens.
Whether you put the upgraded copycat in slot 1 or slot 2 is a really interesting decision, and one that you can make dynamically. There isn't a clean answer to this. And it's one that has counterplay. So if you have Hermes Boots and you think 2 good boy triggers are enough, you definitely can just go upgraded copycat in 1, guarantee 2 good boy triggers. If that means, my good boys are 10-10, so that's plus 30 to my team, good enough. And if I'm at the stage again where that is good enough, cool, put it in slot 1. If that's not true, maybe swap it around. Maybe you need to get a little bit lucky, have the regular copycat trigger, and you need the second copycat to survive and make its attack. You can do it the other way around. If you know your opponent is playing a bunch of 70-70s, they're Miri or something. You can also consider, if your opponent's on Slay, they really often have a Grimsoul in slot 1. And Grimsoul doesn't kill a copycat a lot of the time, which makes it much safer to put that upgraded copycat in slot 2, where it will get the maximum amount of stats. And so I think the Slay players should more often stop playing Grimsoul in slot 1 when you know you're going up against copycat. That's some counterplay. Worth mentioning.
That makes a lot. I hadn't considered that at all, that there's comps out there where their first minion is always tiny. And I'm always thrilled. It's the first thing you look for when I'm copycat. I'm loading up the opponent's board. I'm like, what's their first attacker? Can it wreck me?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, there's a ton of really intricate play that can be done with positioning with this board. Similarly, if I've got, whether you put the friendly spirit or the good boy in slots 5 or slot 6, again, can be dependent. If the good boy is very small and you need to high roll, one of the ways you can cheat your way to a ridiculous amount of stats is if the friendly spirit triggers and hits the good boy, well, then it makes everything huge.
Because the copycat's going to trigger 2 units behind it from left to right every time.
Yes. Similarly, if I've got good boy and a baby bear or a summon, you want the summon to trigger first so that it gets the good boy buff. Doesn't come up super often, but there's a lot of positioning things. You do have it. There's a lot to think about in those 1, 2, 5, 6 slots. 3, 4, 7. Who cares? Just do whatever. Really, again, is a half comp. Anyway, otherwise, so that's some intricacies that are really important to be thinking about. Unusual strategy this card. Otherwise, I have done copycat Grimsoul. Copycat in 2, Grimsoul in 5 and 6.
And then your 3 spare slots is a Slay's comp, essentially?
Yeah, it can be Chupa Baba Yaga. It can be Yorm.
Oh, okay. We're just stacking up some 20 power.
This is not the play you don't want to go in this direction. But it is not, especially on tier 4 where you're hedging, you're not sure which strategy to go for. You pick up some Grimsouls, you pick up some Copycats. They do work together. And especially if your Chupa isn't big enough that it's slaying on its own very often, this is a good way of getting a lot of triggers on it. Worth thinking about, definitely an unusual strategy, definitely not plan A. You can do it, and it's kind of exciting.
Yeah, if we're going into like a late Slays thing, that is definitely exciting. I'm glad that Yorm still might have a home in the world. It's sad, he's so much smaller than Chupacabras.
Yeah. And then otherwise you want to talk about 6-man boards. Again, that comes down to this positioning thing. Especially if you've got Hermes Boots, you get to trigger 2 units if your Copycat's in slot 2 rather than slot 1. It's really good. Worth mentioning how excellent Lightning Dragon is in going in that 7th slot. Because it does always die unless you're buffing it. It's also an extremely good counter to other people playing this strategy. If your Lightning Dragon attacks their friendly spirit, and now their Copycat attacks and does nothing, they are dead, and you have won. And even against Slays, sometimes Baba Yagas are small enough to be dying to this, if they haven't had too many Chupacabra buffs. Lightning Dragon is a relatively good anti-meta unit right now. Yeah, I think that's worth highlighting.
It's a shame that Soltec is so cheap and so many stats.
Yes, Soltec is definitely the punish. But again, if you're going to play 6 units, having the Lightning Dragon in slot 1 actually didn't cost you anything. Other than buying it, I guess.
that brings us on really nicely into tier 6, which I've got down as counterplay. What are we meant to do about all of these copycats, all of these copy boys that are out there in the world?
Yeah, number one is get Hermes boots yourself.
Hermes boots is the number one draw into this archetype for me. Like,
Yeah.
when I'm tripling 2-drops, Hermes boots is one of the things top of my list, second only to Skip. And yeah, getting that early Hermes boots, which, as you say, works both as a counter and as a draw in, and as a, oh, now my cats are worth that much more.
Yeah, for sure. Otherwise, back row hate, both Lightning Dragon and the Evil Dragon are good at demolishing this comp that is extremely reliant on its back row being alive. Therefore, the counterplay to the counterplay becomes Sultic Ancients, and that's a fun minigame. But usually, yeah, you want to be playing units that can attack their back row, and you want to make sure that the first unit attack can actually kill the copycat. Again, it's really, don't put your ranged unit that only has 11 power in slot 1. Don't put your Grimsoul in slot 1 if you know what you're fighting. And there's no scouting in this game. Sometimes you won't know. But if you've seen them earlier, have a good sense for it. Make sure you actually can kill the copycats. Once, especially in the late game, if they go off, they're gonna kill it all.
And this isn't true 100% of the time, but the turn that these boards are weakest for me is when you've just got the copycat and the friendly spirit, and you're about to start snowballing that value. And if you're at that point in the mid game, and you're like, oh, I've still got this little baby dragon, this 7-powered baby dragon in slot 1. It's been there for a while, and we love it. No, you know what? Let's put the giant frog prince there, and let's make sure that if we get lucky, we can snipe this person and deal 10 damage to them, because that will matter when we're facing them with only 3 people left.
The strategy also does have a dip in power level on exactly tier 6, because you do need to find the good boy, and then it's pretty small when you buy it. If you can get to tier 6 and be strong relative to them, that's a good time to just murder them. It's, again, the perfect board is just demolishing you. I recently had a board where when my copycat attacked, it added 2,500 total stats. You can't outscale that. Don't try. Sometimes that means you need to go full on scam. It's not a comp particularly vulnerable to rotten apple. It is vulnerable to cupids, much more than it is to rotten apple trees. It's more vulnerable to cupids than it is to medusas. Most of the time, it's kill them before they get to this super endgame, as it is with Trophy Hunter. The redundancy, especially if they're at the stage where they have 2 copycats and either of them attacking is lethal, at that point you're all in on hope my Pigamorph gets the 1 in 7. You can't do much more than that. Try and kill them before then.
That sounds like good advice. I think I would rather be the copycat than be facing the copycat. Onward up to tier 7, which is the tier that the podcast is named after. What I've put here for this is half copycat mid games, which we've touched upon a lot already, which is this idea that this is a small comp that you can get away with doing something else with the rest of your board. Is there anything else you want to tell people about copycats? Anything else any traps you want to warn them about?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to highlight, you do want to place just bunches of stats, especially before you're good boy. Don't even worry about what the unit is. Just play anything at all in that triangle in 3-4-7. Ranged units are nice to put friendly spirit buffs on. Sporco to make your copycat less embarrassingly small if you've only got 1 death rattle. A way to give copycat attack. Even Mim if you're just transitioning into it. You can, don't worry about it too much. Just take the good units that you would take if you were playing anything else. Don't try and don't just play as if you're going to get the good boy and it's going to be great. You don't need to. You don't need to be thinking about whether it's good or evil. The good boy is so many stats, and I will play Sherwood Archer in my final comp because it is so ridiculous the amount of stats you get. So yeah, don't
get the good units after the good boy.
Yeah, to some extent.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I think the trees half comp is worth it. You can do the sleigh half comp. Actually, copycat in 2, Chupacabra in 3, with the friendly spirit in 6 is a way to scale your friendly spirit. It's a little half-assed. It might go wrong, but you can do that. That's totally fine. You're not going to be as strong as full copycat or as full slay, but who cares? It's fine. It gives you, you're open, it's direction, it's relatively powerful in that stage of the game.
That feels very Trophy Hunter to me, and I realise this late game comp sounds very similar to an overpowered Trophy Hunter comp. Is that worth it, or is that just a hat on a hat? Are we fundamentally, what's the point in your good boy slaying every time when it's attacking as a 200-200? It's big enough.
Oh, you mean playing this on Trophy Hunter?
Yes. Yeah. We are Trophy. Is Trophy Hunter a good hero for copyboy? Is it additionally hated out of the meta by copyboy?
Yes, definitely. The Friendly Spirit used to be the biggest on-ramp for Trophy Hunter. I now am picking Friendly Spirit much, much higher than I used to be. I think Trophy Hunter is really struggling as a result. Yeah, it is. I think a hat on a hat is a good description. You don't need... Trophy Hunter can do its own thing without needing the copycats. Copycats can do its own thing without needing the Trophy Hunter. Who cares?
Okay, unless there's any other closing thoughts, I'm prepared to call that a show.
Gonna miss this meta to some extent. It's all changing. Maybe even by the time this show goes up. But it's been a good one. I've had a lot of success on it, and I think actually the rise of Copyboy really more than anything highlights the potential this game has for innovation. It took 2 weeks plus on this patch for this strategy to emerge. If you think you've found a synergy that's worth exploring, go for it. Don't see these straight line, oh, dwarves, I'll just take everything with the word dwarf on it. You can do hybrid comps. You can do weird single 2 units that are good together. That's enough and interesting and worth exploring.
I often think of this as the advantage we have over bots. Like if you've got bots in your lobby, and bless the bots, not that good.
They're really bad.
But any bot could have a deterministic, I want to take the most stats I can this turn, I want to take everything with the word dwarves on it, whatever it might be. What we have is the power to spot these synergies, to know what's coming up, to know what treasures we might want with something, and exploit that into the fact that the bots always come 8th.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's the best moment of the podcast is when you patronise me. That's our show for this week, folks. Thanks so much for joining us. Do tell your friends we're a great place to come to for Brawl strategy podcasting. You can find us on Twitter at 7th Tier Podcast, the number 7. You can track us down on the Discord. I'm Jethro, he's Sythesys. We'll be back next week with the same content, but we'll be saying different words. Until then, don't forget, if their copycat attacks and does nothing, they are dead, and you have won. Have a great week.